Before we return to reviewing Dr. Cole's book, let me introduce one of the two other books on Lagos that I promised to introduce. It's titled Possessed, and it is an intriguing book that reveals the history of law and justice in the Crown Colony of Lagos from 1861 to 1906. It helps any reader to understand the Lagos that existed as a viable kingdom before the amalgamation in 1914 and the evolution that led to the Lagos of today. Possessed was written by Olasupo Shashore, a senior advocate of Nigeria who was Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Lagos State from 2007 to 2011. Now let's return to the conversation with Dr. Patrick Dele-Cole, the author of Modern and Traditional Elites in the Politics of Lagos. Okay, Yomi, about that, the book being an academic book, was that a challenge for you? Did it pose a challenge reading it?
Okay, I don't know how to describe myself, whether I'm an academic or not, so I will not be the best person to answer that question. But I think initially I had issues around some of the theoretical frameworks around sociology. And all of that. But it was just like a brief moment. I mean, reading the book is like taking an aeroplane, right? Climbing the altitude is supposed to be slightly bumpy. And that's just a few pages, the first couple of pages. So anybody who wants to read the book should know that it's just climbing. Once you cruise, it's just cruising all along. So, I mean, but the question is, it's difficult for history not to be academic. I mean, else it becomes story. It's history, not storytelling. I mean, so you wouldn't say something happened and you wouldn't be able to refer to the individuals that were there, what happened, what document. So it's a good book that meets the needs of the core academic, and also meets the needs of the casual reader on the streets. Once he can go through that initial thoughts around theories, which is critical, because you're not just stating history for the sake of stating history. I mean, you must also be able to create your theoretical frameworks around that.
I'm keen on exploring this. You know, while I was reading it, I kept asking, how much do we value works like this? History, how much do we value history in Nigeria? Do we have enough books that tell us the stories of our various cities and towns, as the case may be? This is one on Lagos.
Well, this is a seminal work on Lagos. The reason why it's important is you cannot actually tell the history of Nigeria without telling the history of Lagos. The reason why it's important to tell the stories of cities like Ibadan, you will not be able to tell the story of Western Nigeria if you didn't tell the story of Ibadan. You will not be able to tell the story of Northern Nigeria if you didn't tell the story of Kaduna, or Port Harcourt and what have you. So there is a dearth in studies of cities. In itself is an academic, a proper academic sphere, because it breaks down history to the molecules, because it talks about the day-to-day life. It doesn't deal always with kind of grand issues that histories tend to deal with. There are books that have dealt with the Oil Rivers Protectorate, DK's famous book. There are books which Alagwa wrote about the various areas in the Niger Delta. There are books written by Afigbo. Then, of course, in the economic sphere, there are the ones written by Carlo Ezera. But this is different because it's dealing with a living subject. Whatever the British found here in 1851 is still here. Obanikoro is here. The Dejo chiefs are here. The various intrigues, the things that kind of, the bread and butter of politics is still where it is. It may have changed a little, but it's still as dynamic and as vicious as it used to be.
And again, maybe also to add to that is the fact that I think it's in some people's interest to ensure we don't tell the stories. because the stories negate some of the things they thrive for. I mean, so when somebody, for example, says Yoruba nation and seems to suggest that there is a Yoruba nation historically, this book will tell you that that's not the case. I mean, there were parts of the book that talks about how the Egbas, for example, said non-Egbas must not open shops in the Egbas, the same way the Lagos did that. I mean, anybody who has read the story of Ibadan, the books on Ibadan, we know about a town called Ijaye. Yes. Ijaye is just further down from Ibadan after you leave Ojo, current Ojo, after you leave Aite, you go to the left, you go to Ijaye. At the point in which Ibadan was having, I think, about 100,000 inhabitants, Ijaye was having 70,000. So it was like the next town. And how those two towns fought war and Ibadan decimated and finished Ijaye. To the extent that Ijaye people are now spread all over the place, and in Abeokuta, they're all over the place now. Now, there's no way somebody who wants to make you feel there is an Ibadan entity will want that book to sell, because that totally negates what they're trying to say. But that's the beauty of this kind of books. You can understand why we need to interrogate concepts that we throw around in Nigeria. When people say the Yoruba agenda, as if there is this Yorubaness that we had always been, and not just a recent thing in our history. I mean, in fact, if you actually read this book, you will actually agree with what I say more often than not, that it's difficult to say Lagos is Yoruba. Because it actually talks about the tensions between it and the hinterland, and that's the way it kept referring to it. But it's important for us to also situate the contribution of books like this to some of the emerging themes and ideas we have in Nigeria. I mean, so for example, when we talk about the Igbo nation or the Yoruba nation or the Hausa agenda, to suspect or to suggest that it has always been. These things are very recent in our history. I mean, when, for example, you hear of wars between towns like Ijaye and Ibadan, these are towns that are kilometers apart. Towns that the war led to such decimation that the whole of Ijaye was sacked. I mean, that's made Ijaye people to spread over the place. This book, for example, showed us, for example, there were times when the Egbas made rules and laws to say nobody should own a shop in that whole axis who was not an Egba man, and the Lagos people reiterated. So at what point do you now say there was this Yoruba-ness at the end of the day? But so a book like this helps you understand that we are city-states, and will merge to form those identities that are more recent than even our city-states.